The spaceport was alive with chaos. Ships of every shape and color moved in every direction, some docking, some taking off, others barely managing to stay upright in the gusts of wind that swept across the metal platforms. Aliens of countless species hustled across the docks, speaking in rapid, unfamiliar tongues, their voices blending into a constant hum of trade, anger, and curiosity. Humans were few here, even fewer were respected. Most came and went unnoticed, their presence tolerated but rarely admired. Among the noisy crowd, a sudden explosion cut through the usual clamor. A small shuttle, battered and smoking, plummeted from the sky. Sparks flew as it crashed near the edge of the port, leaving a trail of fire and twisted metal. The sound of impact made many aliens step back, fear flickering in their eyes. No one moved forward to help. Some whispered in low voices about the untouchable one inside. Rumors said her kind carried dangers that could not be predicted. Her species was noble, feared, and rumored to possess powers that could destabilize entire planets if mishandled. Most aliens decided that staying away was the safest choice. But one human, small in stature and unremarkable in appearance, stepped closer. His boots crunched on the metal shards as he approached the smoking wreckage. His eyes were steady, curious, and cautious at the same time. He had seen crashes before, and he had learned to judge situations quickly. He ignored the whispered warnings and the fearful glares. Inside the wreckage, the alien woman was trapped. Her body was delicate-looking, almost fragile, yet she radiated an aura that made the humans around her feel strangely calm and strangely alert at the same time. Her skin shimmered faintly under the damaged canopy of her shuttle, reflecting colors no human had ever seen before. Her eyes, large and expressive, flickered open, and for a brief moment she looked around in confusion and pain. The human crouched beside her, examining the wreckage. He spoke softly, though he didn't expect her to understand him. "I can get you out," he said. "Just stay still." His hands moved carefully, lifting twisted metal and creating a small gap for her to move. She tried to speak, but the sounds were strange and alien, a mixture of hissing and melodic tones. He could not understand her words, but he could feel the urgency behind them. Time was critical. The shuttle's fuel was leaking, and sparks occasionally shot out from exposed wires. The other aliens remained frozen, some pretending to look busy, others watching with apprehensive fascination. No one dared intervene. Fear of her species was stronger than fear for her life. The human paused for a second, taking in the situation. He was just one person, and she was unlike anything he had ever seen. But something inside him urged him forward. He had a choice: leave her to fate like everyone else or risk the unknown. He chose the latter. He lifted her carefully, noticing how light she was despite her size. Her arms were weak and her breathing was shallow. He could feel a faint pulse of energy radiating from her chest, a rhythmic thrum that seemed almost alive. It was subtle, but he noticed it, as if her life force was speaking directly to him. "Don't worry," he murmured, moving toward a safer area. "I've got you." Some frowned, others muttered about human audacity. A few tried to edge closer, but fear kept them frozen. Their caution was understandable. Her species was powerful, unpredictable, and untouchable, or so they thought. The human ignored the murmurs. His focus was entirely on her. He lifted her carefully over the edge of the wreckage, avoiding sparks and jagged metal. She weakly clung to him, her body trembling. He adjusted his grip, trying to support her without causing more pain. They reached a small, abandoned docking bay, away from the main crowd. The human gently laid her down on a metal platform. Sparks from the wreckage lit up her shimmering skin, casting reflections that danced like liquid fire. She looked at him again, this time with a mix of curiosity and caution. Her alien voice rose in a melodic tone, almost like a question. He shook his head gently. "I don't understand," he said, "but I'm not going to hurt you." That small flicker of recognition was enough to keep him going. He examined her injuries. Her limbs were bruised, some parts scorched by the fire. Her breathing was uneven. It would take careful attention to stabilize her. He checked the docking bay for supplies. Luckily, he found a small emergency medkit abandoned by another human crew. It was basic, but it could help him stop bleeding, clean wounds, and prevent infection. He worked quickly, cleaning burns and wrapping torn clothing to support her body. She shifted slightly, wincing, but did not resist. Every movement was a test, and every test he passed seemed to increase her confidence in him. Minutes felt like hours, but finally her immediate injuries were managed. She lay still, exhausted but alive. The human stepped back, breathing heavily himself. He could feel adrenaline still coursing through his veins, but relief washed over him. She was safe, for now. He glanced at the crowd of aliens still watching from a distance. Many were shocked, others confused, and a few annoyed. They had all assumed the human would hesitate, that he would follow the rules of fear and avoidance. Instead, he had acted. His courage and care had made him stand out, a small but undeniable force against indifference. The alien woman slowly turned her head toward him, her large eyes blinking. For the first time, she seemed to relax slightly. She extended a delicate hand, reaching toward him. He took it, steadying her. The touch was electric again, subtle but impossible to ignore. It was as if she was testing him, sensing his intentions and confirming that he meant no harm. He smiled gently. "I'm not leaving you," he said simply. Words were strange between them, but meaning was clear. Compassion transcended language. As she lay recovering, the human realized something remarkable. This was no ordinary alien. The energy pulsing from her body was unlike anything he had encountered. It was faint, subtle, but undeniably powerful. And yet she had trusted him, someone from a species she might have considered weak or insignificant. The crowd began to disperse slowly. Some aliens muttered excuses, claiming they had urgent matters elsewhere. Others looked back with envy or suspicion. The human did not care. He focused entirely on keeping her safe. Hours passed, and the sun began to set over the metal platforms of the spaceport. The alien woman's breathing grew steadier. Her gaze softened as she studied him, and in that moment an unspoken understanding formed. Neither fully knew what the future held, but a bond had been forged in the fire of the crash, in the small act of bravery that defied expectation. The human stayed by her side through the night. He kept watch, tending to minor needs, offering water and quietly talking, even though she could not understand him. His presence was calm, reassuring, a silent promise that she was no longer alone. As the first stars appeared in the sky, the alien woman lifted her hand and lightly touched his arm. The human felt the familiar electric pulse again, stronger this time, almost like a greeting. She had not spoken, but the message was clear. She recognized him, and she acknowledged his courage. The human nodded, smiling softly. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." And far away, hidden eyes watched from the shadows. The aliens who had abandoned her were not finished. Some muttered in disbelief, others in anger, but all had taken notice. One human had acted where they had faltered, and that action would not be forgotten. A story had begun, small and fragile, but already powerful enough to change perspectives. The human had chosen compassion over fear, action over hesitation. And in doing so, he had begun to tip the scales. The alien woman stirred, looking up at him again. Her eyes shimmered faintly, reflecting the starlight above. There was a question in them, curiosity, and perhaps even hope. The human met her gaze and smiled. He did not know what awaited them, but he knew one thing for certs: he would not abandon her. Not now, not ever. The night grew quiet, but the bond formed in that quiet chaos burned brightly, a silent promise that even in a galaxy full of fear, courage, and compassion could change everything. The first rays of the sun cut through the thick metal walls of the human outpost, casting long shadows across the quiet interior. The outpost was small, built for utility rather than comfort, but it was safe. Its walls were lined with basic equipment, workbenches, tools, and medical supplies. Outside, the world moved on, indifferent to the struggles of those who had stumbled into the shadows, but inside, a human and an alien began an unlikely story. The alien woman lay on a makeshift bed, her shimmering skin still bruised in places and her breathing deep and steady. The human sat beside her, checking the bandages and makeshift splints he had fashioned the night before. He moved carefully, his hands steady and practiced. He had done enough repairs on broken machines and wounded humans to know that gentleness mattered as much as skill. She stirred and lifted her head slightly, her large eyes blinking against the sunlight. She tried to speak, producing musical tones that rolled like distant wind through chimes. The human listened patiently, frowning slightly. He did not understand her words, but the tone of her voice was urgent, asking questions, seeking clarity. "I don't know your language," he said softly, "but I'll learn." Her eyes shimmered again, reflecting hues that shifted from deep blue to violet. The effect was mesmerizing, even to someone who had spent years among strange technology and stranger beings. He noticed her studying him, and for the first time he saw a flicker of what might have been hesitation, trust, forming slowly, cautiously. He moved to a small table and began organizing supplies. Bandages, antiseptics, and a few alien devices he had scavenged from the crash lay before him. The alien woman watched him with curiosity, her hands twitching slightly as if she wanted to reach for the objects but was unsure. He noticed her interest. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not going to take anything from you." He picked up a small device she had carried in the shuttle, a sleek object with softly glowing symbols. He examined it carefully, then set it down, respecting its purpose. She watched him, silent now, though her eyes were alive with thought. For hours, he worked to clean the wounds that had not healed fully during the night. He improvised. Some of the human medical equipment was incompatible with her biology, so he had to invent solutions. He used conductive gels and soft energy fields to stabilize bruised tissue, preventing infection, while delicate threads held torn skin together. Each movement was precise, careful, and slow. He never forced her, never moved too quickly, giving her time to understand he meant no harm. Her breathing steadied further, and she began to respond with small gestures. She touched his hands lightly when he applied a bandage, a simple acknowledgement, a wordless thank you that spoke volumes. It surprised him how much could be communicated without words. As the day passed, he learned more about her reactions. She flinched at sudden movements, recoiled from loud noises, and tilted her head in curiosity at small lights and gestures. He realized she was studying humans as much as he was studying her, measuring their reactions, trying to understand their intentions. "Do you understand me?" he asked finally, more out of habit than hope. Her head tilted again, then she made a small, melodic sound that rose and fell like a question. It was not a yes, not a no, but it was acknowledgement. He smiled faintly, feeling a tiny victory. When he stepped back for a moment, she reached out and grasped his sleeve lightly. The pulse of energy he had felt the night before returned, subtle but undeniable. Her presence was almost magnetic, and he could feel it brushing against his skin, warm and vibrating. She was clearly not an ordinary being, and her biology hinted at powers humans had yet to understand. Yet there was no threat, only caution and curiosity. By mid-afternoon, he had arranged a small area for her to sit and attempt light movement. She hesitated at first, her body weak and uncertain, but with careful guidance she moved a hand, then an arm, then a leg. Each step was slow, measured, and filled with focus. He watched closely, supporting her without intruding, offering encouragement with gentle words and steady hands. "Good," he said softly. "That's it. You're doing fine." The human had expected mistrust and fear, but instead he found curiosity and slowly a willingness to cooperate. He realized something remarkable. Despite her injuries and the danger she had experienced, she was willing to engage, to learn, to adapt. The human in him felt a quiet pride. The alien in her seemed cautious but observant, measuring every gesture, every word. It was in that calm afternoon that she first allowed him to examine one of the alien devices she carried. It was a small, spherical object, faintly glowing, covered in intricate symbols. He turned it over in his hands, careful not to activate anything accidentally. As he examined it, she made low, melodic sounds, as if explaining its purpose, though he could not understand her words. He listened carefully, observing her gestures and tone, trying to find patterns. Hours passed in quiet collaboration. He cleaned her wounds, guided her movements, and carefully experimented with the device, trying to understand how it worked. She did not resist, but she observed every step, occasionally touching his hands to correct him, her touch gentle but insistent. It was a dance of trust and communication without words, each learning from the other. By evening, she was able to sit without assistance for several minutes. The human noted her progress with satisfaction. She moved with grace, even in her weakened state, and he marveled at the strength hidden beneath her delicate appearance. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the outpost in shades of gold and red, a faint sound reached them from outside, a soft, rhythmic vibration in the ground. He froze, his senses alert. She turned her head toward the sound, her eyes narrowing slightly. Though she could not speak his language, her expression communicated warning. The human moved quickly to a small console, scanning for threats. Outside, a few figures had appeared, shadows against the fading light. He recognized them immediately, alien emissaries, tall and imposing, their movements deliberate. They had not forgotten her. They had come to claim her, to demand her return. He stepped in front of her, placing himself between her and the intruders. She made a low, melodic sound, tense and sharp, almost like a warning. He could see the tension in her muscles, the readiness in her eyes. "They want her back," he murmured. "I won't let them take her." It was clear she trusted him enough to follow his lead, even in the face of potential danger. The emissaries moved closer, their voices carrying commands and threats in their alien language. He did not understand the words, but he understood the intent. They demanded compliance. He tightened his stance, studying them, calculating options. Retreat was impossible, negotiation was unlikely. He had to rely on his instincts, his human ingenuity, and the trust he had earned from the alien woman. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a calm and deliberate movement, he activated a small device on the console. A faint, shimmering barrier appeared between them and the emissaries, not harmful but a clear signal. The intruders could not pass. The alien woman's eyes widened and she made a soft sound, something like a question, and he nodded. He was improvising, creating defenses from the technology around them. The emissaries hesitated, clearly unprepared for such clever resistance. They muttered to one another, eyes flicking to the alien woman and back to the human. Their arrogance faltered. Humans were usually weak, compliant, or easily intimidated. Yet here was one human, standing calmly, defying them and protecting someone they considered beyond reach. Night fell fully, and the emissaries withdrew, muttering threats, clearly shaken but unwilling to risk confrontation. The human and the alien woman remained inside, safe, at least for the moment. She turned to him, her large eyes reflecting the dim light. She made a soft, melodic sound, rising and falling like a question, then placed her hand lightly on his arm. The pulse of energy returned, strong and steady, as if affirming her trust in him. He met her gaze and smiled. "Don't worry," he said softly. "We'll face whatever comes together." Her species was powerful, and those who sought to control or harm her would not give up easily. But he also knew this. Together, they could face whatever came. Human courage, empathy, and ingenuity had brought them this far, and he was determined it would carry them further. And in the quiet moments of that first night in the outpost, a new bond was forming, one that would shape the fates of both human and alien alike. The alien woman had survived the crash, yes, but more importantly, she had found someone who would stand by her, not out of fear or obligation, but out of choice. That choice, human and alien together, had the power to change everything. The following morning, the outpost was quiet. The rising sun cast golden light over the metal walls and floors, illuminating the small room where the human and the alien woman continued to recover and learn from each other. Outside, the wind carried the distant hum of ships and machinery, but inside, a new rhythm had begun, one of focus, observation, and cautious cooperation. The alien woman sat upright on the bed, her movements more confident than before. Her eyes, large and reflective, followed the human as he moved around the room, arranging tools and preparing a small workbench. Today, they would attempt something more ambitious, examining one of the alien devices in detail. He picked up the spherical object she had carried in her shuttle. Its surface glowed softly, shifting colors like liquid metal. He rotated it slowly, studying the symbols etched into its surface. She leaned closer, her hand hovering over it, ready to correct him if he touched the wrong spot. "Careful," she said, not in words, but in a melodic sound that rose and fell like a wave. He nodded, understanding her caution. He had learned to read her gestures, the way she moved, and the subtle energy that radiated from her body. It was more than just light or heat. It was a pulse of something alive, almost like a heartbeat that extended beyond her chest. He experimented gently, pressing certain symbols in sequence. A faint hum filled the room, and a soft light projected from the device, forming geometric patterns in the air. She gasped softly, her hand brushing his arm, and he felt the pulse of energy intensify. She seemed pleased, almost surprised, that a human could interact with her technology so carefully. "Not bad," she said in her own melodic tone, rising and falling in an almost musical cadence. He smiled faintly, feeling a small victory. Even without understanding her words, he could sense approval. Hours passed in focused study. He learned how to manipulate the device enough to stabilize it, preventing energy leaks that might be dangerous to her. She watched him intently, her gaze sharp and curious, occasionally making small corrections with a touch or gesture. He realized she was teaching him, not in words, but through observation and feedback. Humans were adaptable, yes, but so were aliens, and here they were learning from each other. Later, he helped her stand and move. She tested her strength slowly, rising from the bed without support. Her movements were fluid, graceful, even in recovery, and he noticed something remarkable. Every step she took left a faint trace of energy in the air, like a shimmer that lingered briefly before fading. He had seen nothing like it before, and though he did not fully understand it, he recognized that she was extraordinary. As they worked together, she began to respond more openly to his attempts at communication. He drew simple shapes on a small tablet and showed her symbols, trying to establish a basic understanding. She touched the symbols, nodded or shook her head, and soon they had developed a simple method to exchange ideas. It was slow, painstaking, but progress was real. By mid-afternoon, he noticed something troubling. A faint signal appeared on a monitoring device, showing distant movement in the area. He adjusted the scope and saw several ships approaching, small but fast. He recognized the markings immediately, emissaries from her species, the same ones who had arrived the night before. They were coming back, likely with more insistence this time. He looked at her, her eyes widening in recognition and concern. She did not speak, but the pulse of energy from her body quickened like a silent alarm. He knew they would have to prepare. "Stay calm," he said softly. "We can handle this." He began to arrange improvised defenses, using the tools and materials in the outpost. He was clever, resourceful, and unafraid to experiment. Wires were rerouted to create alarms, small energy fields were activated to create barriers, and he set traps that were simple but effective. He worked fast, carefully, his mind racing ahead to anticipate every possible move the intruders might make. She watched him, her eyes following every movement. Occasionally, she extended a hand, brushing against his as if to lend her own subtle energy to stabilize a field or device. He could feel her pulse strengthen his work, faint but real, almost like collaboration without words. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. The first emissaries arrived at dusk, landing in small craft that skimmed the surface of the nearby terrain. They moved cautiously but with confidence, assuming they would intimidate the human and recover the alien woman easily. Instead, they were met with glowing barriers, small alarms, and evidence of careful preparation. One emissary stepped forward, tall and imposing, and shouted commands in their alien tongue. The human raised his hands, not in fear, but as a signal of readiness. He had no weapons, not truly, but he had wit, preparation, and the alien woman's subtle power working alongside him. The emissaries hesitated. They were not expecting resistance, certainly not from a human. Their arrogance had blinded them, assuming that humans were weak, easily intimidated, and incapable of clever action. Now they realized that they had underestimated more than just this one human. They had underestimated humanity itself. Inside, the alien woman stood, her posture proud and alert. Her energy pulsed stronger than before, a rhythmic hum that made the air itself vibrate subtly. The emissaries noticed it, pausing and stepping back slightly. She made a melodic sound, low and commanding, that carried authority. The human watched her, amazed. Her presence alone could influence them, yet she did not act aggressively. Her loyalty was clear. She would not fight unless necessary, but she would defend herself and the one who had saved her. The human moved carefully, guiding her behind him, maintaining a calm but assertive stance. He spoke softly, more to reassure himself than anyone else. "Stay with me," he said. "We can do this." It was not lethal, not aggressive, but it was enough to block the intruders and buy time. The alien woman extended her hands slightly, and the barrier strengthened, the shimmer intensifying as if her energy was amplifying his work. The emissaries muttered among themselves, clearly unprepared for such a collaboration between human ingenuity and alien power. For several tense minutes, the standoff continued. Neither side moved forward. The human and the alien woman exchanged a glance, an unspoken understanding passing between them. He could sense her trust, her willingness to follow his lead, and he felt the same toward her. Together, they were formidable. Finally, the emissaries withdrew, muttering threats and clearly shaken. They had not expected resistance, and certainly not cooperation of this level. Their departure was careful, strategic, and unwilling, leaving the human and the alien woman alone once more. Inside the outpost, the human let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He glanced at her, and she returned his look, calm now but alert. Her energy still pulsed, steady and reassuring, a silent reminder of her power and trust. "You're stronger than I thought," he said with a faint smile. "And smarter, too." It was a small victory, but it was proof of what cooperation could achieve. As night fell over the outpost, they settled back into the room, exhausted but alive. The human tended to minor injuries, cleaned equipment, and ensured that all systems were functioning properly. She watched him, fascinated, her eyes reflecting the dim light. He realized something remarkable. The alien woman was not only physically extraordinary, but she was also intelligent, observant, and capable of understanding humans in ways most aliens could not. Her trust had been earned slowly, but now it was solid. They had formed a bond based on respect, skill, and courage. In the quiet moments before sleep, he noticed her energy pulse again, faint and rhythmic, like a heartbeat extending beyond her chest. It was comforting, almost like a silent conversation, a language of presence and trust. He reached out and took her hand, careful and gentle. She did not pull away, instead allowing the connection, acknowledging his protection and friendship. He leaned back slightly, watching the stars through a small window. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and uncertainty, but for the first time he felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived the crash, survived the emissaries, and learned to communicate across the boundaries of species and language. Their alliance was fragile, yes, but it was real, and it was powerful. He turned to the alien woman and smiled softly. "Tomorrow, we learn more, together." Outside, the wind continued to sweep across the metal surfaces of the outpost. Somewhere in the distance, ships moved, carrying news, danger, and opportunity. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel. Yet inside the small, quiet outpost, a human and an alien woman had found a way to survive, to cooperate, and to trust. It was the beginning of something larger than either of them could yet comprehend. Their combined ingenuity, courage, and compassion would shape what was to come. And as they rested, side by side, the human knew one thing with certainty. Whatever challenges awaited them in the galaxy, they would face them together. He had discovered not just an alien being, but a partner, a friend, and a reminder that the human spirit, even in the face of overwhelming odds, could rise to meet any challenge. The galaxy beyond the outpost was vast and unpredictable, full of shifting alliances, distant suns, and dangers that most humans had never imagined. From the quiet safety of their small refuge, the human and the alien woman watched the stars, understanding that their temporary calm could not last forever. The emissaries from her species would return, and they would bring more than just threats. They would bring demands, expectations, and possibly force. Morning came slowly, painting the metal walls with pale sunlight. The alien woman moved with greater confidence than the day before, her limbs strong, her posture proud. She no longer flinched at sudden movements, no longer hesitated when she needed to reach or move. The human observed her carefully, noting the subtle changes in her energy, the way her pulse seemed to extend into the room itself, as if the very air around her acknowledged her presence. "We need to prepare," he said softly, his hands moving quickly as he organized tools, devices, and supplies. "They won't give up easily. They'll come back with more than words." That trust, fragile yet real, would be the key to what was coming. The human began to innovate. Using fragments of alien technology from her shuttle, combined with human tools, he created hybrid devices that could detect movement, amplify energy, and even project subtle barriers. Each device was carefully calibrated, and each device relied not only on his understanding but also on the alien woman's energy. She placed her hands near circuits, lightly touching components, and the pulse that flowed from her strengthened the devices, stabilizing them beyond human capability. Hours passed as they worked together. Every minor success built confidence, every adjustment refined their plan. They were not just surviving, they were preparing. And in the process, the human discovered something remarkable. Humanity's ingenuity was not limited to tools and machines. It extended to strategy, adaptability, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. By mid-afternoon, the first sign of incoming ships appeared. Small, fast, sleek, they skimmed the atmosphere with the precision of trained soldiers. The emissaries had returned, more determined and more numerous than before. Their purpose was clear: reclaim the alien woman and punish the human who dared interfere. The human did not hesitate. He activated the devices they had prepared. A soft shimmer formed around the outpost, faint yet unyielding, a protective layer that would not stop a determined attack but would slow it and give them an advantage. He gestured to the alien woman, who stepped forward, her presence radiating energy that amplified the defenses. She was not acting aggressively. Her power was protective, a subtle warning that humans should not be underestimated. The emissaries landed near the outpost, their movements calculated, their confidence high. They assumed that fear would dominate, that the human would be a minor obstacle. They had underestimated him once. They would not make that mistake again, but they were already behind. One of the emissaries approached, tall and armored, projecting authority. "Return her," it demanded, its voice sharp and commanding. "She is ours, you have no claim here." No human should possess such courage or command such presence, but here they were, standing together, a team that defied expectations. The alien woman made a low melodic sound, not a threat, but a clear signal. The pulse of energy strengthened around her hands, spreading through the room. The emissaries noticed it immediately, stepping back, reassessing the situation. She was powerful, yes, but more importantly, she had chosen to stand with a human, and that human was not afraid. A tense silence followed. Then, with careful coordination, the human activated one of the hybrid devices. A soft barrier projected outward, shimmering faintly. It was not deadly, not harmful, but it blocked entry and slowed movement. The emissaries muttered among themselves, clearly frustrated. Humans were supposed to be weak, incapable, unpredictable. But here one stood firm, clever, and prepared. The alien woman stepped closer to the human, her eyes fixed on the emissaries. She extended her hands slightly, and the energy pulse strengthened the barrier, reinforcing it beyond the human's technical ability. Together, they had created something stronger than either could achieve alone. The emissaries hesitated. They had underestimated humans, underestimated cooperation, and underestimated the bond between this human and their kind. Frustration flickered across their faces. They had expected fear, not strategy. They had expected hesitation, not a calculated defense. And now they faced a reality they had not prepared for. Humanity was resourceful, courageous, and capable of innovation even under pressure. Hours passed in tense standoff. The emissaries tested the barriers, moving cautiously, their strategies precise. But every attempt to breach the defenses failed. Every failure demonstrated the human's ingenuity and the alien woman's subtle power. Slowly, the emissaries began to retreat, their confidence shaken. They would not give up, certainly, but they would have to rethink their approach. Inside the outpost, the human and the alien woman took a moment to breathe. They were not triumphant, not yet, but they had survived the encounter. They had proven in a small yet undeniable way that humans could rise to challenges that even seasoned aliens found difficult. The alien woman looked at him, her eyes shimmering with appreciation. She made a melodic sound, rising and falling in cadence, which he understood as both acknowledgement and trust. She had chosen to rely on him, and in return he had protected her. That choice, mutual and unspoken, was powerful. As night fell over the outpost, the human reviewed their defenses and made small adjustments. He taught her to manipulate some of the devices, showing her how they worked and allowing her to contribute more actively. She responded quickly, her intelligence and adaptability evident. Together, they had become not just allies, but a team. He realized something extraordinary. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy. Many aliens assumed humans were weak, predictable, or easily intimidated. But here, with the alien woman at his side, he had proven something simple yet profound. Courage, creativity, and empathy could overcome fear, danger, and prejudice. Humanity had strength beyond the physical. It had determination, ingenuity, and the capacity to inspire trust and loyalty even across species. The alien woman moved to the window, gazing at the stars. Her voice rose in soft, melodic tones, and though he could not understand the words, he sensed meaning. Hope, caution, and perhaps a hint of admiration. He joined her, looking outward at the galaxy that was vast, unpredictable, and filled with both danger and opportunity. "Tomorrow they will return," he said softly, "but we'll be ready together." She had survived the crash, faced danger, and now stood beside him willingly, trusting him with her safety. That trust was not fragile. It was a bond forged through action, courage, and shared purpose. Hours later, as they prepared to rest, the human checked every device one last time. He ensured barriers were active, alarms ready, and systems functional. The alien woman watched, learning, absorbing, and occasionally lending her energy to stabilize components. She was more than a passenger. She was a participant, a partner, and a reminder that collaboration could achieve extraordinary results. As they finally rested, the human reflected on the day's events. Each challenge had been met with courage and ingenuity. Each threat had been countered with strategy and cooperation, and each moment had strengthened their bond. He knew that the galaxy would continue to test them, that dangers would grow more complex and unpredictable, but he also knew one simple truth. Humans could rise to meet even the greatest challenges. The alien woman stirred slightly, her energy pulsing rhythmically. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of reassurance and trust. He smiled, feeling the quiet strength in her presence. Together they had survived, learned, and adapted. Together they would face whatever came next. Outside, the stars twinkled against the dark expanse of space, distant and indifferent, yet full of possibility. The galaxy was vast, but in the quiet outpost, two beings, human and alien, had begun to change the balance in subtle ways. One small act of courage, one choice to trust, had created ripples that would extend far beyond their immediate surroundings. The human lay back, eyes on the ceiling, reflecting on the day. He thought of the emissaries, the devices, the alien woman's strength, and the pulse of energy that connected them. He thought of humanity's potential, of courage and ingenuity as forces in a galaxy that often underestimated them. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself a small smile, knowing that even in the vast uncertainty ahead, he had a partner and a purpose. The alien woman rested beside him, her energy calm but alive, a reminder that trust and cooperation could overcome fear, ignorance, and danger. The galaxy would continue to challenge them, but together they were stronger than either alone. And as night settled over the outpost, one simple truth became clear. Humans, when courageous, clever, and compassionate, could change the course of events, earning respect and recognition in ways that others never imagined. The galaxy seemed calm that morning, the distant stars sparkling against the dark expanse of space. But the human and the alien woman knew better. Calm was temporary, a fleeting illusion. The emissaries would return stronger and more determined. This time the stakes were higher. This time failure was not an option. The human moved through the outpost quickly, checking each device, recalibrating energy barriers, and testing sensors. The alien woman followed closely, her eyes sharp, her hands glowing faintly as she lent subtle energy to stabilize the devices. Together, they were a team, combining human ingenuity with alien power in ways neither had anticipated. She finally spoke, her voice rising and falling in melodic tones. The human listened carefully, understanding not the words but the intent, a warning, a strategy, and a promise to fight if necessary. He nodded. Words were unnecessary, their cooperation spoke louder than language. By mid-morning, the first signs of movement appeared on the sensors. Ships approached from multiple directions, larger and faster than before. The emissaries had learned from their last encounter, but they had not anticipated the bond between human and alien. They had not expected the ingenuity, adaptability, and courage that defined humanity. The human activated a series of defenses he had prepared the night before. Shimmering barriers rose around the outpost, soft yet unyielding, designed to slow and confuse rather than destroy. Devices projected light patterns and subtle energy pulses, disorienting sensors and masking movements. The alien woman stepped forward, her energy extending outward, strengthening the defenses and creating a field of protection that even the emissaries would find difficult to penetrate. The ships landed with precision, emissaries disembarking in formation. Their leader, tall and imposing, approached first, his eyes narrowed. "Return her," he demanded, voice firm and commanding. "This human has no authority. He interferes where he should not." She stood tall, her eyes unwavering, her energy pulsing strongly. It was not aggressive, but it was undeniable. She would defend herself and the human who had saved her. Together they were formidable. For a moment, nothing moved. The tension was palpable. Then the emissaries advanced cautiously, testing the barriers. The human adjusted devices in real time, creating shifting patterns of energy that confused and slowed the intruders. The alien woman mirrored his actions, extending her hands, her pulse enhancing the effects of the defenses. Every movement was synchronized, every action a testament to their growing partnership. One emissary attempted to breach the barrier with a surge of energy. The human reacted instantly, recalibrating a nearby device. The barrier shimmered and absorbed the force, redirecting it harmlessly into the ground. The alien woman added her energy, strengthening the shield beyond its original design. The emissary stepped back, clearly surprised. Humans were clever, yes, but this human was extraordinary. Another tried a more subtle approach, sneaking toward the outpost from a side route. The human had anticipated it. Sensors triggered a response, lights flashed, alarms sounded, and a field of energy redirected the intruder harmlessly back. The alien woman's eyes glimmered with approval, and she emitted a low melodic tone, acknowledging their success. Time passed in a tense dance of strategy and defense. The human and the alien woman worked together seamlessly, improvising, adapting, and staying one step ahead. Their cooperation was more than practical. It was inspiring. Even from a distance, other species observing the scene would notice the remarkable synergy between human creativity and alien power. Hours later, the emissaries regrouped, clearly frustrated. They had expected to intimidate and reclaim the alien woman easily, but every attempt had been countered. Their confidence was shaken. Some exchanged uncertain glances, muttering in their own language, clearly debating whether to retreat or continue. The human seized the moment. Using a combination of devices and the alien woman's energy, he projected a subtle signal that revealed critical weaknesses in the emissary's approach. Small but precise, the signal allowed them to anticipate movements, avoid traps, and maintain control of the outpost. The alien woman mirrored his actions, reinforcing the effects with her own energy. Together, they were unstoppable. Finally, the emissary leader raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "This human, he is not ordinary," he admitted, his voice tinged with reluctant respect. "And this one," he said, glancing at the alien woman, "has chosen to stand with him. We cannot force her." But now respect had been earned, not through intimidation or violence, but through courage, ingenuity, and empathy. Humanity, underestimated for so long, had proven its worth. The alien woman stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly as she reinforced the final barriers, ensuring no surprise attacks could occur as the emissaries retreated. She glanced at the human, her expression one of gratitude and trust. Together, they had not only survived, but had changed perceptions. As the emissaries departed, the human allowed himself a small smile. "It's over for now," he said. "They'll think twice before underestimating us again." It was light, but it carried meaning, acknowledgement, relief, and a subtle hint of pride. She had found an ally in a species many of her kind had dismissed, and together they had triumphed. Later that evening, as they tended to minor repairs and ensured the outpost was secure, the human reflected on what had happened. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy. Many species assumed they were weak, insignificant, or predictable. Yet here he was, a single human, standing with an alien of remarkable power, defending her against those who had once believed themselves unstoppable. Their partnership had proven that courage, creativity, and compassion could defy expectation. The alien woman watched him work, her eyes wide with appreciation. She moved closer, lending her energy subtly to stabilize devices and assist with repairs. The human realized that she was teaching him as much as he was protecting her. She was intelligent, resourceful, and observant, and together they had formed a synergy that neither could have achieved alone. As night fell, they sat side by side, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and unknowns, yet within this small outpost they had found strength, trust, and purpose. The human realized that it was not the barriers, devices, or even the alien's power that had won the day. It was cooperation, empathy, and courage. Humanity's spirit, often underestimated, had made the difference. "I think they'll remember this," he said softly, almost to himself. "Humans can be more than they expect." For the first time, the human felt something he had not felt in a long while. A sense of purpose, of pride not for himself, but for humanity. They had been underestimated for centuries, overlooked, dismissed, and ignored. But here, through compassion, ingenuity, and courage, they had changed perceptions, not through conquest, but through action, integrity, and loyalty. Days passed, and the outpost returned to quiet. Repairs were made, systems maintained, and routines resumed. Yet the impact of their actions continued to ripple outward. Word spread through various channels. A human had protected an alien of great importance, had outsmarted trained emissaries, and had earned respect in ways others had assumed impossible. The reputation of humanity, small and underestimated in many parts of the galaxy, began to grow. The alien woman finally spoke in tones the human could not understand, but her gestures, her energy, and her expressions conveyed meaning clearly: gratitude, recognition, and partnership. She had chosen him, and through him, chosen humanity as allies worthy of trust and respect. The human nodded, understanding more than words could convey. Together they had faced danger, relied on each other, and survived. Together they had proven that courage, ingenuity, and empathy were forces in themselves, forces that could change outcomes, challenge assumptions, and inspire others. As they prepared to rest that night, the human reflected on the journey. From the crash to recovery, from danger to defense, they had faced every challenge with determination. And in doing so, they had proven something essential. Humans, when courageous, clever, and compassionate, could rise to any challenge. They could earn trust, respect, and recognition in a galaxy that often dismissed them. The alien woman rested beside him, her energy calm but alive, a constant reminder that trust and cooperation could achieve extraordinary results. They had begun a new chapter, one not just of survival but of possibility. Together, they could face the unknown, the dangers, and the opportunities that the galaxy would continue to offer. And in the quiet of that outpost, one undeniable truth was clear. Humanity, underestimated and overlooked, had proven its value. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion were not weaknesses, they were strengths. Strengths that could shape the galaxy, inspire allies, and earn respect in ways no one had anticipated. The human smiled, reaching out to gently touch her hand. The pulse of energy from her hand was steady, rhythmic, and reassuring. They had survived the impossible, faced the unimaginable, and forged a bond that would carry them through whatever came next. And as the stars shone over the vast galaxy, both human and alien knew that together, they had not only survived, they had changed the course of events, leaving a lasting mark on the galaxy and proving that courage and trust could overcome even the greatest of challenges.